Hello, and welcome back to the Rise and Recreate podcast. This is a space for people who have moved through many chapters, many identities, and have learned to just trust the flow of life, even when it asks them to begin again. I'm your host, Raechel Shaney, and today I'm joined by Miss Berlinda, also known as Be in Flow. Her life has been shaped by movement, resilience, and deep connection, growing up across cultures and continents, navigating challenge and change, and ultimately finding her way back to intuition, love, and inner strength. She's a mother, educator, guide, and storyteller, and someone who lives in close relationship with nature, animals, and the unseen threads that connect us all. Berlinda, I'm so happy to have you here today. I would love for you to just introduce yourself and tell us a bit about where you are currently in life.
Thank you so much, Raechel, for this wonderful opportunity to connect across the globe.
Yeah.
And we are even going across time zones. It's quite magical what technology enables us to do, although I always find my greater peace in nature. That is where I seem to be in flow the most. That's when things become uncomplicated, peaceful, and sovereign for me. And only yesterday I had a wonderful opportunity to be on horseback again. And that also made me kind of connect with the real animal again and understand what does it mean to be in flow or to join up with an animal like a horse, for example. We don't only have the animals around us, we also deeply connect in the stories that we are told throughout history. If we look at ancient cultures like Egypt as well, they have often revered many different animals that still accompany us today, like the cat and the dog and the birds, the ibis, or the falcon that have been related and to gods and being given godlike qualities. So I think deep rooted in our soul, we still have an understanding of what is tangible about these beautiful sovereign animal spirits that accompany the human existence and our development throughout time. So yeah, I am deeply passionate about the topic of connecting with nature, connecting with different species and understanding on how we can join in co-creating the future. So at the moment, I'm in a really good space. I'm in a space where I can practice gratitude. I can reflect on where I've come from and the things that I've managed to brave, new things, keeps the creativity flowing, expands us as human beings on this earthly adventure of ours. And whether we do it symbolically or whether we do it in meditation or whether we do it in real, I think it's always so beautiful to connect with what I call magical in life. I think there are so many magical moments, and sometimes there can be hidden little gems in just daily little connections that we find joyous, that touch our hearts, because I think heart space is what we're all looking for in a world that sometimes can be quite confusing.
Absolutely. So I would love to know when your fascination with being connected to animals began and kind of how it's evolved throughout your lifetime.
Yeah, thanks, Raechel, for that question. It takes me back to my childhood. It wasn't always a very easy time or a very sheltered time. Didn't always feel safe, provided for, protected. And I think the animal spirits that accompanied me taught me things. Be they a real dog that I might have had by my side, or in dream form. I think the animals have taught me to not run away from the things that I'm afraid of. They've taught me to stop, to turn around and to look, to really look. And in that looking, there is a transformation that happens. In that braving, that moment of uncertainty where anything is possible. That's the beauty of it, and that's the magic of it. That as a creative human being, when you start facing newness or start facing something that you think maybe is scary, maybe it's not so scary after all. And then things start transforming and taking on a new shape. So even as a child, it took me a while. Obviously, fear can run deep, and sometimes it puts you along a certain track for a really long time until you stop and say, hang on, maybe there's another way of looking. Maybe there's another way of seeing and understanding and connecting. And like I say, then sometimes the fear transforms, takes on a new shape, and opens up a whole new possibility. So I think running away from my nightmares as a child, I learned to engage in the world of lucid dreaming, where one can openly ask questions and say, okay, what is this all about? Let's look a bit deeper. Let's use our beautiful human capacity to reflect and to marvel at um, just our individual journey, our story, as you'd like to call it. We all have these beautiful stories on where we've come from. So yeah, maybe in the past things weren't always as clear. They weren't as joyous, maybe. Um, yeah, I think every human being is here for a quest, for a reason to seek and to search and to change and to expand. And it's beautiful looking back and kind of having practiced gratitude, I think, as well. So yeah, my connection to animals maybe in the beginning was a bit more of a dreamlike state. I think when we look at the unconscious, a lot of our mentors, our big mentors in the psychology field and in other fields, have spoken about even the collective unconscious, that flow of life that we all kind of are linked to. And I think sometimes when we feel really the most alone, it's so encouraging to receive messages about the collective unconscious and to see what beautiful creative tools that we have right across culture, right across time, um, that links the human being to the creative source. Whether we enjoy art in the form of drawing or dancing or singing, or oracle cards that we might draw upon. I love using my animal cards. We find inspiration there. So I think along the path of challenge in our journey, we have tools. We are given tools due to our link to source, due to our interconnectedness and our ability to reflect and to understand what it is that we're meant to perhaps master on our journey. And I mean, do we ever master anything really? But there are tools. We're given tools towards joy, towards balance. And I think nature's insight has always been intriguing to me.
I love that. So a couple of things came up for me. One is when you're connected with the animals, you realize how present they are. And when you bring that presence into your life, magical things happen because we are our own worst enemies sometimes in our mind. But what I would love to know is you said when you were younger, you had this deep connection with nature and animals, and you also found that a lot of it came out within lucid dreaming and that creative power that we all have inside of us. And I think a lot of us, when we're children, are tuned in and tapped into this. And then there's a moment in our life when adulthood kind of hits us hard and we almost just push that connection aside and lose it a little. And I'm curious if you found that this happened in your life, and if so, what brought you back to the connection and to this magic and to this creative power that we all have within us.
I think sometimes the things that we feel are the most challenging can bring us to a place where we are open to those kind of deeper experiences that are waiting to come up. Loneliness, for example. Um, I found myself as an only child having to often navigate the adult world in a way that wasn't always so pleasant or or graspable or understandable to me. And I found that in those spaces of being alone, connecting with an animal, a dog, for example, could just give me a sense of being protected, being guided, being watched. I don't know if you've got any pets yourself at home, but the way that they are loyal, the way that my dog, even the Cocker Spaniel that I have at home with me, she will just lie there staring at me as though I'm really the best thing ever. And it's amazing. I sometimes wish that we could all see ourselves the way our animal friends see us, with so much devotion, so much loyalty. Um, and yeah, they are, like you say, so tangible, so grounded. For me, animals are very real things. So when I go into the animal card readings, although it's on a symbolic level, I do believe there's something inside our soul that we are intricately connected to in terms of the bigger picture. There's what happens in daily life and the things that come and go. And yet we're part of a much bigger flow. We're part of a much bigger network. And animals, I think, just help us to tap into the more tangible, simple things in life, um, like presence, body language. How do you really intuit what you're seeing? Even if we're not, really looking at someone, sometimes we get a feeling about what could be going on, or maybe what's happening, and the questions that need to be asked. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
So you've mentioned flow quite a few times, and I'd be curious to hear a time in your life where you felt like maybe you had exited that flow, that natural flow of life, and where you felt like almost you were going up current and fighting against it, and kind of take us through a time where that was your experience and then how you were able to move yourself back into flow.
Yeah, I think I always thought I was going to become primarily a career woman. So I studied psychology at varsity. I studied art. I was going to become an art therapist. And then my life took a very different turn. Um, I met the beautiful man that I call my life partner now, still very much connected, very much in the flow of life together, in the partnership together. And then the craziness of family hit me. I didn't ever think I was going to be a mom or be capable of even having children after the kind of background that I didn't see as being all that positive. It was rather confusing and chaotic for me. And then I found myself to be a mom of two beautiful children. Um, After a back operation at the age of 28, I was even told that carrying to full term and giving birth was going to be a challenge. Well, it wasn't. It was one of the things that I expected to be really, really difficult, because that is what was put into my head. And
Mhm.
then it wasn't difficult for me. Um, yeah, I mean, I was in labor for 4 hours and then in labor for 3 hours with the second child. 15 minutes, literally in the birthing ward. That is super fast. That is like, I can't, it's always painful, but it depends on how long it goes on for. So, I mean, for me, my children, right from the beginning, I had no expectations I could embrace easily. But what followed then was a 20-year long, how can I say, family humdrum, getting caught up in daily life, trying to make ends meet, taking on jobs that would balance family life or allow family life in a way that um, had us as parents being present for our children. So a lot of the time I felt like I was putting myself as an individual into the background because I was rearing children. And it became a very, very kind of central focus for me in my life. And now that my children have moved out and they are exploring their own journey, they're both studying overseas, they're living independently as young adults. I'm very proud of the fact that I've managed to chaperone them to that level, but it's only now again in this new life phase that I feel that I'm returning to a new sense of self. So returning to the space of where that being alone or having more time alone um, is a wonderful choice. You know, sometimes in life, I think you feel like you're swept in this current, taking care of other people, being busy with financial worries, concerns, duties that pile up from morning till evening. And I must say that it's lovely now to feel myself in that space again where I can focus on what is it that's deep inside my soul and what is it that I can share in terms of the journey that I've come along. So yeah, it hasn't always felt like a flow. At times it even felt dark and depressing and oh gosh, there's got to be more to life than this. And yet, you know, I just find in one of my darkest moments looking up at a beautiful bougainvillea in full bloom, much like the pink petals that are behind me now. And it was just, you know, kind of so vibrant in its color and beauty. And I thought, nah, you know, you're not ready to give up on anything yet. You know, just keep going because their life offers so much beauty, so much adventure and heart. I think I've met so many wonderful people in my existence. Although I loved working with animals and animal cards, I love people too. I think people are complicated. They're not always easy and they challenge us to be our best authentic self in a courageous way, often, especially when we feel we don't fit in or we're different. And I think the more we learn to be loyal to ourselves, the way our dog would see us, the more we see us with that kind of look of, oh, it is what it is. It's good as it is. Um, so yeah, how does one get back into the flow when one feels one isn't in flow? I think sometimes perseverance is key. Like I say, everybody has different tools that keep life magical. Sometimes it's simple things like going for a walk, um, grounding. Some people love the element of water, so swimming, bathing. Sometimes it's really simple things like that that return you back to yeah, your foundations, your blueprint, what you're wired to enjoy. I think there's a lot of distractions in life, so sometimes that can get pretty crazy and pretty confusing. That doesn't mean the beauty ain't there to be had.
Mm-hmm. It is very important to take those times every day to just find something magical. I love that. For me, I can definitely walking through the woods and then finding some water and a good rock to sit on does it for me every time. And I think all of the parents listening can definitely relate to your story of how your main focus becomes your children and doing the best job you can with them. And sometimes your own desires do get kind of put on the back burner. And there will be a time again where you can tap into those. But within your story, you said something that I would love for you to expand on. And you said, you know, you had back surgery and you were told by doctors that having children would be a very difficult experience for you. If it was even possible, they weren't sure. And this happens so much in our life, whether it's parents, an authority figure, somebody putting this belief in your head where you attach to it and then you say, oh, this is probably my reality. Birthing children might not happen for me. It might be really hard. You know, escaping the financial situation I'm in might be really hard because I've never seen that modeled for me. Whatever belief it may be that somebody else has imprinted upon you, I would love for you to expand on, first of all, how that affects you. And then, second of all, how you were able to overcome that and still have two beautiful children and realize actually this wasn't hard for me with the first one, and how you overcame this belief that was imprinted upon you.
I think despite what happens in the past, the question remains, what did I create? What can I now create? And what will I still be creating in future? And I think that question is so important, staying in that question and not overkilling it by having to know absolutely what that that picture looks like in every detail. I think a lot of people nowadays speak about manifesting, and there where you take your thought, that is what you're going to manifest. There is some truth in that, and I really do believe that what you focus on is what you're going to manifest, provided that I think the mind is linked to your heart. Because very often, even what you think you might want in life might not actually get you to that feeling that you're looking for.
Mm.
So, we have a lot of input in our lives through technology, through other mentors that might feature in our lives. Depending on what circles we surround ourselves with, there's varying input. It can get quite noisy and quite confusing. I honestly can say that a lot of the best things that have happened in my life have not turned out the way I thought. And going with that flow, there's something to be said for both extremes. I think definitely our life is influenced by what we focus on, because that's the environment we then choose to put ourselves into. And I think there's a lot to be said about having a choice. What kind of environment do I place myself into? But like I said, the second, I think, more important question is, what flows for me in my heart? Where's that space where I feel at home? Where's that space where I feel at peace? What gives me that? What gives me that feeling? And it might not be what is obvious to other people. And yeah, I think there really is something about trusting the magic. Um, and yeah, very often it comes from our subconscious. Maybe we're not always so aware. So I think the heart and the mind definitely need to be in balance. And I think life shows you, the connection of life shows you. I don't think we're meant to be isolated from, well, first and foremost, from ourselves. I think we have to be true to our authentic self. And often there are situations in life where that doesn't seem to be so easy.
Mhm.
And yet there's nothing else that we can do but be the kind of creature that we are in our being, the way we arrive, the way we show up in our relationships. Um, and then, of course, how do we connect with other people? Is our intention for their highest good, as much as it would be an intention for ourselves to want to do good? I think that goodwill for ourselves should be extended towards other people as well. And then when we go beyond people, it's other creatures. Is anything deserves to be treated with reverence of the sacred, that sacred interconnection that we have. So I think as long as one has an attitude of being open, life can be exciting, and it doesn't always turn out the way we think. And yes, we need resilience. We definitely need resilience, and we need staying power. I think a lot of our animal counterparts, they show us that they have staying power, and that's what makes them so amazing. They don't judge us. They they just love us. And I think there's a lot to be said for that. A lot of the time you think you want certain things and you'll do cartwheels. You'll bend over backwards to achieve that thing, or to have that particular relationship work better for you. And yet it doesn't. And then there'll be other things that just happen easily. And it doesn't matter what anybody says. It's not always by the book. And there's no guarantee ever, but don't ever, ever believe that something is impossible.
Mm.
I think there's so much magic in life, and one just has to learn to do that dance. It's like, I don't know, I spoke about Jung's collective unconscious. Um, there's many other people that are mystics or physicists or neuropsychologists, like David Burns. He talks about the implicate order. And he says, yes, there's an order in life. There's a certain way of doing things, certain way that things appear in our life. But there's this field that we're kind of all part of. And if we pull this way, then if we pull to the right, then something shifts on the left. So because it's all interconnected, it's like it doesn't matter which way we move and we choose those moves. It has a kind of a ripple effect. And I think there's so much beauty in that. And then synchronicities start to surface, and it's part of the creative field. It's beautiful and it's awesome. And I think as long as your heart is in the right place and you keep on reflecting, because it's constantly moving. There's so much flux and movement in everybody's life. I think that's just divine power, and there's something just amazing about being able to live this unique, wonderful existence in your body right now at this time. And then just seeing, let's just see what happens.
I love that. You just took us on such a beautiful journey there. And something that I'm picking up upon is all of the magic and the flow of life and the synchronicities and all of that. It's very much an internal to external experience where a lot of that happens within our own selves first. And for a lot of people, just the busyness of life, or sometimes maybe the heaviness of what's happening in the world, almost pulls them out of that a bit. And they become a bit more, you could say, like dense and a bit more involved in the external, the material world. And when that happens, sometimes it's easy to be pulled out of that flow, not hear your intuition as much, not really see the magic in life because they're so concerned with the external world and the material. And I would love for you to just share some advice you have of when that does happen, because that can happen to the most connected magical being, is being pulled out of that and
Definitely.
into what is happening, particularly with the heaviness of the world sometimes. And what
Yeah.
advice would you have for people when that does happen to be able to move back into that flow and really hear their intuition and trust their intuition and start to witness the magic and synchronicities in life again?
I think one of the biggest things that just immediately comes to mind is play. Play. Sometimes we take ourselves too seriously, and we get bogged down with the way we think things should be. And very often the disappointment comes because our expectations are great. We have great expectations of ourselves and sometimes of other people. Um, that presence in an animal that is loyal sometimes is exactly the freedom of just accepting things as they are, not trying to fight too much, not trying to exert so much energy in making things different or making things right that probably don't want to be right for you, then rather look somewhere else. Um, perhaps in relationships too, sometimes we just really bark up the wrong tree.
Mhm.
Um, so I think that's a lot easier said than done. And I think there's just, I have a very playful nature. And I think for a very, very long time, um, initially when I became a teacher, I taught adults only. At the age of 16, I became a dog trainer, and I started training two dogs alongside each other that actually had completely different characters. So I had to use a very different voice for the one as opposed to how I trained the other one. And then I had the privilege of training many or teaching many other people how to communicate with their dogs in terms of being a dog trainer. So I started off teaching adults at a very young age. Then at varsity, also became a class rep and became a tutor. So for a very long time, I taught adults. And then suddenly, little people came into my life, and I started teaching really young people. And it started linking to the multicultural background that I came from. I grew up speaking 4 languages, and I started then working with children that grew up in that kind of setup. You know, what was expected of them when they were hearing mom speak one language, dad spoke another language. Perhaps the country they lived in introduced them to a third language. Um, so, yeah, I think we often find ourselves in situations that are really just too much. You
Mm-hmm.
know, too much expectation, too much pulling in different directions. And then it's good just to become a bit lighter. It's almost like the whale that is such a big creature and it moves through these big oceans, and yet it moves with lightness. It's such a big animal, and yet it also knows how to play. Once you connect or have the privilege of connecting with a whale, um, once you speak its language and you have certain click sounds that you mimic or whatever it is, that creature, if it chooses to connect with you, it can be the most bombastic experience where perhaps, you know, if you've ever seen anything like that happen, where a diver perhaps will then start circling in the water, and then the whale will do that dance. So, you know, find that thing that makes you play. Um, be it digging in the soil, if you're in the garden, doing some sand arts, be it in water where you can feel yourself playing in the waves again. Um, be it dancing, perhaps you love music and you feel that that kind of puts you onto another wavelength. Just get up and and do it differently to what you've done it like before. Perhaps try something new. Challenge yourself to play differently, to play in a different field, and perhaps put yourself in a new environment and just see, what does that feel like for you? Explore. It's such an adventure, and it's never ever the way it's absolutely supposed to be according to somebody. Just play with it and work out what makes you feel alive.
That's so beautiful. The whale touched my heart. For those of you who don't know, I was a professional photography guide in Alaska for a season, and I spent 5 days a week out on the water with the humpback whales and the orcas. And there really is something truly magical about seeing such a massive creature jump up out of the water and spin. And a lot of times they actually just do that for fun. So all of the beautiful analogies of the lessons we can take from the animals, and a theme that's coming across in our conversation is play, right? And play, what does play do? It brings you back into the present moment, and you are just enjoying what it is around you, what it is you're doing in that moment, and bringing yourself back to the present really is where that connection comes through, that connection to the magic, to the synchronicities, to the source, to your intuition. So that is just such a beautiful reminder. And you mentioned, growing up speaking, you said 4 languages. First of all, that's incredible. But I would love to hear how being around so many different cultures really shaped your life and who you are today and what you've learned from that.
I think for a long time I felt resentful of not having a very clear identity, not having a very simple cultural background. Like I say, people often come with a certain set of expectations that are culturally wired. Um, they kind of expect people to sleep a certain way, eat a certain way, bury their dead a certain way, practice their spirituality a certain way. Um, and then suddenly you have perhaps 2 or 3 different cultures facing each other, and they're not aligned. They have different viewpoints. They have different ways of doing really simple daily things. And I think I was quite resentful for a long time, feeling, wow, why is my life so complicated? Like, why can't it just be easy? But what it did enable me to do from a very young age when you don't feel empowered, you feel like there are adults that are making decisions for you. You learn to listen, especially if you're an only child. You learn to look and you learn to listen. And therefore, over time, there does come a certain understanding and an empathy where different people are coming from, why they think and feel the way they do. So, yeah, I think over time, it definitely has developed uh, deeper empathy, rather than just coming from a space of criticism for what you don't understand. Unveil, unveil. That's
Oh,
beautiful.
that
I love
is
it.
so funny. I'm gonna fix that real quick.
Unveiling the closet.
All of my beautiful scenery behind me. Actually, you know what? I'm just gonna let it. We're just gonna roll with it. There goes my
Roll
background.
with it. Roll with it. It's a beautiful synchronicity. And then suddenly the veil drops and it's all totally different to the way you think it should be.
Really though, throwing perfection out of the window and just saying,
There you go. This is what it is. I mean, I don't have a real background behind me. That's the one that's on Zoom. Um, yeah, which is a pity because I have some really nice candles behind me, which I was hoping you would see. But anyway, it turned out differently.
it's so funny too because I have like 50 plants in my house, and I would have had to move my whole table to have like my actual cute background. So I was like, I'll just throw this up and it'll be nice. And I did a different thing today where I clipped it, and I don't usually do that. And well, the clips did not
You
look
know what's you know
as
what's so beautiful for me about that is, to be very honest, I've never ever done a podcast before. I'm so new to this. And I was also like, oh my gosh, and how caught up can one get in, what one presents, the picture one presents.
Yep.
And a lot of the time it is culturally based. And I think there's just something so beautiful about the way animals arrive. They don't come with the whole bunch of attire and they don't worry too much about their background. But I think I can't, I don't think there is a single human being on the planet that can't relate to some kind of connection with the animal or the natural world. We haven't really spoken much about the trees and the plants either that I have symbolically behind me here. But there is there's a lot to be said about people that connect with the finer essences of plants, for example. I mean, that's a whole nother topic. I won't go there now, but it is beautiful when you think of how, different cultures also have mastered, um, different topics in nature. Certain cultures relate to perhaps, the cattle that they live with every day, or the alligators that they find in their rivers, or um, certain insects that they might connect with that give them medicinal assistance in whatever way. So, like, be it the plant world or be it the animal world, um, there's just no facade there. There's no great kind of putting on the look, the walk, the talk. And I must say, I've always been a bit of devil's advocate with that. I kind of like pricking those bubbles a little bit. So I think, just to arrive as authentically as you are in your beautiful home, you have a roof over your head, you have clothes, you have food, and you have the privilege of interviewing many different beautiful people on your podcasts. So I think, regardless of what is in the background, um, the fact that you can laugh at yourself, I think that's beautiful. And I think that's a life skill as well. Is just sometimes take yourself with a pinch of salt. I always say this too will pass. When it gets really bad, this too will pass. And it does. And it really, really does. Um, yeah. So I think as long as we just stay connected, as long as we just meet each other with absolute goodwill and learn whatever song lines each one of us are singing. I know the whales connect through song lines. Um, just be open, be open and just human, just human. I think this world just requires us to be as powerful in our manifestation and as vulnerable in our physicality as we definitely all are. It doesn't matter what age, whether you're young or old. I think children have a lot of wisdom to impart, and maybe older people do too. It doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter where you live, where you come from, what your cultural background is, how old you are. Like I say, what status you hold. All the money in the world can't buy you that place that you call home when you put your when you put your head on someone's shoulder at night and you feel so at peace. You could be anywhere with that person in the world. It wouldn't matter how much money you had, but you would know that that feels like home. And sometimes animals give you that also, that absolute unconditional love. It's not to be taken for granted, but it certainly is a gem.
Mm, they absolutely do. And that's so true. It's the feeling that you take with you, regardless of your external circumstances. And you touched on something very important, the being safe and being vulnerable. I know some of my biggest lessons in life have come through being safe enough to open up and share like what it is on my heart truly, and feeling that vulnerability. And it's so hard sometimes, and then the connection that it creates between you and another person, because everybody's gone through things, everybody has stuff that they feel very vulnerable when sharing. And I just think that's such an important thing to bring up, is that is also a big part of growth and creativity, is touching that part of yourself. And another thing that you mentioned is the finding humor in things. Humor is what has gotten me through some of the hardest moments of my life. Is like, okay, yes, this is a mess right now. What you mentioned earlier is, this too shall pass. I understand this will pass. Where can I find the tiny bit of humor and beauty in this circumstance to help me move through it? And when we tap into that, I think sometimes it does help us move through the hard things maybe a bit more easier. Your kids are grown, they're finding their own adventures, and you have this space to come back to yourself. And I think it's very important to send a message out to people that it doesn't matter your age. You can always come back to what your dreams are and what you want to create for yourself. And I'd love for you to share what that looks like for you now. Like, what's on your heart? What is it that you want to create? And overcoming the cultural and programming that we get of like, oh no, you're a little too old to follow your dreams, or those beliefs that we can tap into that aren't very empowering.
Yeah, I think one of the things that have always meant a lot to me. So this is the question of what is your value system? What is important to you as a human being? What are some of the concepts or the ideals that you strive towards? Now, something that's accompanied me for a very, very long time is this creature here. I'll just show you these beautiful cards that I work with. Um, oh, let me just see how I can show you.
There you
Oh,
go.
there we go. There. Okay, so that's the wolf. This particular card, or this set of cards, is actually a German set of cards. Um, so the wolf here advises to listen to your inner wisdom and to enjoy the gift of freedom. So the wolf stands for freedom. It's one of my biggest values, is that I'm very freedom loving. Freedom loving in the sense that I like to have freedom to move, and I like to have the freedom to be flexible. Um, so part of the next leg of the journey that I'm looking forward to now is the freedom to be able to get on a plane and go overseas without having to plow through tons and tons of paperwork to get permission, because my husband's traveling on a South African passport, so that's challenging at the best of times. So one thing that I'm really gearing towards is just being able to move quickly if I should want to be able to arrive spontaneously if I should need to. So although the world is such a, how can I say, such a big playing field for all of us, through technology, through the ability to just fly to another country, um, and into another time zone. There's still sometimes a lot of paperwork that is just, makes life just so difficult. So I think for me, one of the things that I don't like about the current system is these rules and regulations that can just really suck the very joy out of life. So yeah, really,
I know.
paperwork and formality and, just being controlled, being, just having to, like I say, abide by so many rules and fill out so much paperwork.
Hmm.
So, yeah, I think I would like to be able to fly overseas to see my kids whenever I want to. That's one of the things. The other thing is, I love technology and in what it's doing for us right now. And I think the caliber of speakers that I have had the joy of witnessing in the last month alone, I've listened to a lot of people speak, and I'm gobsmacked at, just how much grace people are appearing with. Be they young, be they grandmother stage, no matter what stage of their lives. I've listened to primarily women speaking, I must admit. There've been the odd few male speakers, but I am really overjoyed at seeing what kind of feminine is arriving. Yeah, I'm just really marveling at what I'm hearing from women and their experiences, like you say, these stories, their, how they manifest things, how they make their magic happen. And it really is just such a beautiful platform. The technology is such a beautiful platform to create your circle, um, and to reach out to a huge amount of people if this is what you want to build. For myself personally, I'm still a little bit old school. I must admit, when I have a person standing in front of me, I somehow pick up more cues. My intuition is a lot sharper when I've got the real thing in front of me.
Mhm.
So I think sometimes the screen makes me feel a bit insecure because it's like so flat.
I get that.
I can't really reach you the way I would like to. I can't interact with you perhaps the way I would like to. So I think part of my dream is not only the freedom to move, but also have have the financial freedom to be able to connect with real people in real time.
Hmm.
And yeah, I mean, all these other platforms are great, even like I say, working symbolically with the animals. But to be able to experience a whale in real life or to sit on horseback, um, even just to smell a whale or to come home and have that smell of stable, it's like it's just another, it's just another sensory experience. And I must say, I really would like to connect with more people like yourself, but also in terms of a reciprocal exchange of experiences. I think I would like that freedom. I would like to be able to offer people a reciprocal exchange, a reciprocal conversation in whatever form that may be. Because I think we're all needing to connect, and we thrive on connection. And of course, we just choose, what kind of playing field would we like? What do we enjoy? What level do we want to connect on? But I mean, the possibilities are numerous.
Yeah, I agree. There's definitely something with the whole world being so technology driven right now. It almost it makes being in person feel that much more special, honestly. Like it has deepened the connection of when you're in person because you're constantly on the phone, on the screen, and that is there's I agree. There's much more magic to being like within that person's energy and being able to touch and hug. So, with the last few minutes we have remaining, I would love for you to just share whatever is left on your heart, anything about, the animals, the magic, the synchronicities, whatever you would like to share with the listeners. Um, the floor is yours.
I think whether your thing is maybe astrology or numerology or Egyptology, whatever your cultural background, whatever the things are that you might enjoy in terms of your research, in terms of the things that you read or listen to, there is something encouraging about thinking of this year as being a number one. They say it's a number one year. Everybody's talking about this time of transformation where we can help to feed into the collective unconscious or into that bigger flow of life that is kind of goes so much deeper than what we maybe can comprehend. For whatever it's worth, I would say go out there with a lot of questions in your heart and just see what answers come. Sometimes it's not about knowing, it's about just being intrigued with the possibility of what your life could look like. And then be careful what you wish for, because you just might get it. And then have a good sense of humor and laugh at yourself occasionally. I think an attitude of openness, of just having reverence for what is sacred, and there is so much that is sacred. There is, include yourself in that sacredness. You will never ever walk this planet in this form, in this time zone, and in this physicality again like you do now. Befriend yourself. Befriend yourself so that you can be a friend to anything and everything around you. I think we haven't spoken about the immaterial world, but go into your space with reverence, even for what your bedroom looks like or your altar. So many people say, oh, create an altar for something. The other day I thought about it. I thought, what? My whole home is my altar. When I go into the garden, when I put up candles somewhere, or I create flowers and I try to make things look homely, or give everything in your life space to breathe. There's something to be said for the minimalistic way of decorating a home nowadays. I think a lot of young people have kind of learned you don't need a lot of clutter to be happy. I think it's different from individual to individual. But there's something to be said about revering even inanimate objects. Give everything its space. And if it doesn't hold a valued space in your heart, then pass it on, let it go, give it to someone else who might revere it differently. So I think, with people too, there's only so many people you can physically connect to. I always kind of look at the hand and I say 5 fingers, five people that are really close to your heart. And the rest is, look, it's the world is like you say, a huge playing field, and we have access to so much more. And I think then it's just gratitude for it doesn't always have to be a lot in order to be good.
Well, what a beautiful conversation we've had. There's been a lot of talk of play and presence and tapping into just the joy that you receive from animals and nature, and realizing that you can find magic in even the smallest moments. And a lot of life really is about the feelings that you're feeling, and it doesn't matter where you are, you can still tap into those feelings. And lots of good stuff from this conversation for sure. So thank you so much. It has been an absolute pleasure. And I'm sure the listeners have gotten a lot of really wonderful, like heartfelt joy from this conversation. So thank you so much.
Thank you, beautiful Raechel. Thank you for your smile and for going along with the flow.
Absolutely.
Oh, thank you so much for giving me this first time opportunity to be on air in a podcast. I've so appreciated you as my host, and I would like to say a warm hello from Cape Town, from South Africa, to everybody who might be listening to this at any point in time. And maybe we'll meet in Cape Town sometime. Come and visit, come and explore the animals and the nature here. And like I say, who knows where my travels will still take me.
I love that. Thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful day.